All right, let's bring in our guest. He's a former NHL player who in his career scored over 200 goals, had over 400 points, and I looked it up, undefeated in hockey fights since sixth grade. Yes, NHL on TNT studio analyst Anson Carter is here. What's happening, Anson?
Are you going to check your stats? Undefeated since kindergarten.
Oh, is that right?
Since kindergarten.
They didn't have a lot of footage back then. And I am going to look back, but I'm going to be honest with you. Well, first of all, I've been a fan of yours for a while now, but I did spend a good portion of last night watching Anson Carter hockey fights while my wife wrapped our oldest son's birthday gifts for today. So I got out of that. But wow, do you do that? Do you go back and watch on YouTube your fights?
I don't, but I've got two daughters. They'll be 14 and 16 this summer, and it's pretty embarrassing when their friends come over to the house and like, "Hey, Mr. Carter, we saw you on YouTube beating some guy up," and I kind of feel bad. And their parents are looking at me like, "Is it okay for me to leave our kids here for the day? We're not quite sure." And they start laughing, so we get a good chuckle out of it.
Listen, who wants to watch other people's kids? I think you have a good out there, right? It's like, yeah,
right, exactly.
Yeah, who knows what
exactly.
can go down? What is your favorite? While we're on the topic, what's your favorite of the fights you've been involved in?
There really isn't a favorite, and I'll tell you why. I chose in my career not to be a fighter. When I was growing up in Toronto, I found like there wasn't really that many skilled black hockey players. And I watched like the black hockey players that played in the league. They were tough guys. And I didn't want to be perceived as that player. And I wanted to have other players coming up after me being, hockey players that could score goals, because it was tough enough to have my parents, give me the green light to play the game of hockey without thinking I was be fighting all the time.
Right.
So I don't really have a favorite fight, because I was a guy that I fought angry. And if I got to the point where we're dropping the gloves, like, I'm really trying to kill you.
Right.
I wasn't like other teammates like Matthew Barnaby and guys like that could just fight and their heartbeat didn't go above 60 beats per minute. That wasn't me. When I fought, like, I was done for the rest of the game. Take me out of there, and either one of us were leaving in a body bag. That was my train of thought going into a fight, unfortunately.
Wow. That's good. Well, no, I think a lot of your teammates would appreciate that, right? And I think you'd appreciate that. The other guy would appreciate that the refs got involved eventually. But I noticed. So what's the first thing? I'm obsessed with this. I'm sorry. Then I promise we'll talk about real stuff. But you reach for the back of the jersey. What was your go-to? How did you plan it out, or was it just like you said, anything goes?
No, it wasn't anything. There's a method to your madness. And I learned early too, if you're getting into a fight, it isn't your ability to punch, it's your ability to take a punch. So if you get your chin and your face out of the way, I mean, you're going to get hit. And if you're okay with that, it should work out fine. But I always wanted to get myself in a position so that I could set up my punches when I had to set my punches up. So I always thought I have to eat a couple if I had to. Make sure you don't get hit too hard. Keep your chin out of the way so you don't get knocked out, because these fights are real. It's not wrestling. It's real. And, just hang in there long enough so I could tie the guy's arms up. And if the jersey came off, the jersey came off. But usually you were tied down. So if you saw the fights and my jersey came over my head, it's because I wasn't tied down, because I wasn't really expecting to fight that night.
Right. I got it. All right. Well, let's get to the games now at hand. You are doing a great job there on TNT. Lots of fun. And you have the West Series, which it just seems to be crazy wide open. I mean, last night, Colorado takes game one. They win 8-6. I know they keep the baseballs in a humidor in Colorado. Is that the same with the pucks? Is that what's going on?
It certainly seemed like it, right? I mean, I watched Larry Walker for years, I guess, hit home runs out of a Coors Field, I think it was called back in the day. Good Canadian baseball player. And it felt like the pucks were juiced last night. Every time you look around, there's a goal going in someone's net.
Yeah. Which style do you prefer? Do you prefer the Eastern Conference, or, like a grinded out gritty, or the wide open, high scoring Western Conference, or somewhere in the middle?
Somewhere in the middle. I mean, I could appreciate as a true hockey purist, I could appreciate a 1-0 game where players are sacrificing and they're playing the body, and, they're doing the little things within the game to, ensure that their team wins the hockey game. But I'm also a hockey fan too. And I love goals. I love skill. I love offense. I love creativity. And we definitely don't have a shortage of that. We don't lack that in this series. You've got so many players top to bottom that could bring you out of your seats at any given moment during a shift. I think that's what makes this series so exciting.
Yeah. All right. Harry has a question for you. Harry, go ahead.
Hey, Anson. It's Al's sidekick here. We just mentioned this, mentioning the series, 13 playoff games for Draisaitl and McDavid. They have a combined 57 points. And the craziest part of that is they're third and fourth behind Kane and Hyman on the team in goals scored for the playoffs. Can that be enough firepower to overcome a tremendous Colorado offense and Mike Smith, who wasn't up for the task last night, moving forward in the series?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is. It was against Calgary because, Calgary's a high-scoring team during the regular season, but I always question their ability to score. I didn't think they scored goals easily enough. When you look at this Avalanche roster, they're so deep from top to bottom, and the drop-off is real. Draisaitl, McDavid, almost 30 points, each. And then everyone else has like maybe 5, 6 points, 3 or 4 points. And you look at the Avalanche roster, it's so much more balanced. It's so much more impressive watching, from top to bottom, whether it's Logan O'Connor getting points, whether it's Kadri getting points, whether it's Rantanen getting points, like Burakovsky. Like, they don't just rely on Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. You've got so many other weapons. And if you're going to win a championship, you have to have everyone contributing.
Comper's been great lately, 4 goals in the last 2 games too.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable. And that's a name. I just left that name out, right? So They just go deep 4 lines, whereas you can't say that about the Oilers. The Oilers, how they've been successful this postseason is the 2 big dogs have been driving the train for them, and everybody else hasn't been a liability. So during the regular season, McDavid and Draisaitl would drive the train, but then those other lines would get on the ice and they couldn't score, or they'd get scored against.
Right.
But now you see those other lines are able to maintain 0-0, play even hockey, and then that allows the other guys to get loose, which they've been doing for the most part this postseason.
So I'm a gambling man, and now the Avs holding the 1-0 advantage, and they were favored anyway to go into this series, or like a 4.5 to 1 favorite. But is it worth taking a shot on Edmonton here? We don't really know about Darcy Kemper, right? We're not sure. They're keeping hush about his. They say now he has an upper body injury. That could be big. Sure, right?
It could be huge. I mean, I believe it was McLeod that scored the goal where Kemper had no idea where that rebound went. And it was a juicy, fat rebound in front. Normally, he controls those rebounds, but he left so much meat on the bone there. It was an easy tap-in from the Edmonton Oilers forward. So I would be a little bit nervous. Even though Francouz came in and played well, and the arena was chanting his name, which was great to hear. And I know the guys love him in that room. He's not Darcy Kemper. And you look at the size of the goaltender. I love big goaltenders. Kemp says 6'4", 6'5", so even he goes down on his knees in the butterfly position, he covers a lot of the net. Francouz is 6 feet tall. And you see a lot of net, you see a lot of mesh. So I don't think Edmonton's out of it, even though I like the Avalanche in this series, just because of the goaltending, you're just not quite sure if the Avalanche are going to defend well enough in front of Francouz and try to keep some of those high-scoring opportunities away from the Oilers.
Right. Now, the other series, let's talk about the Lightning having too much time off. What were they off since May 23rd or something? But the players seem to enjoy the rest. One thing I'll say is Vasilevsky was so hot. So hot. Maybe he didn't want to be off that long, right? What do you see? We've seen this both ways, right? It's too long a break, or not enough of a break. Which way do you think it'll play out for Tampa Bay and the Rangers?
I think it would be too long if these guys hadn't been going for their 3rd straight Stanley Cup championship. But this is a team that's played a ton of hockey the last 3 years. Even you go back even further, they've had a lot of deep runs that didn't really culminate into a Stanley Cup championship. So they've got a lot of playoff mileage on them. I think the break is good for them. I really do. And you look at Vasilevsky, like you've got Kemper and you've got Francouz. You saw Koskinen come in last night. You got Smitty for Edmonton. Vasilevsky's played every single game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, he's the guy. So I think the rest is actually good for him in particular, because that goaltending matchup is going to be out of this world. Shesterkin versus Vasilevsky, 2 Russian goaltenders going head to head. Like, you can't tell me there isn't, some pride that comes into effect. I remember I'd watch Malkin play against Ovechkin, and there was that Russian pride. Who's going to be the best Russian player in that game? So I feel like the same thing is going to come about in the game in this series with Shesterkin and Vasilevsky.
And, of course, the one wild card is Jacob Trouba, although it's not a wild card anymore. You just know he's going to try to or take a player out, opposing player out. I don't even know if these are dirty hits anymore. I'd love to know where you stand on this, because, honestly, it's hard to even evaluate.
I call him Jacob the Hitman Trouba. On the broadcast last night, I thought we should put his body count up, for the big hits. Like, that series turned around, that Pittsburgh series, when Sidney Crosby owned the Rangers. just totally owned it. I'm sure they would have changed the Wikipedia page to, instead of Mr. Dole and Sidney Crosby owning the Rangers, because he was on fire. There was no answer for him. But then you saw Jacob Trouba with that physical hard hit against Sid that knocked him out of that series, and things started to change for them. And the whole team started to play more solid physically in front of Shesterkin. And then Jarvis in that series against, Carolina, going after Max Domi. So I really believe Jacob Trouba increasing his physicality helped turn the tide for that Rangers club, but also having Ryan Reeves there too. Revo's the ultimate life insurance. I always say that I've got life insurance, not because I expect to die, but just in case something happens. And Revo is there. There's no fighting in the postseason, but any shenanigans that happen, he's there on the ice and he just calms that right down. So if you're looking for retribution against Trouba or Lindgren for those hard physical hits, you can't do it because Revo's there ready and willing to answer the bell.
Interesting. What year did that turn where there's no fighting in the postseason? It just seemed like it was such a part of the game in the late 80s, early 90s.
I feel like, it's the last 10, 15 years. As fighting started to decrease in the NHL in the postseason, I think you've seen fighting also decrease because players don't want to take a dumb penalty.
Right.
You even go back to that Carolina series when I think it was Lorentz or someone that stepped in to fight Trouba after that big hit, and the Rangers went on a power play, that ensuing power play, and scored a goal. So yes, you like to see guys dropping the gloves, but the games are too fast or too physical. Every play is too meaningful. You just can't afford to drop the gloves and take an instigator call if the other guy isn't willing to drop the gloves right away and have your team short for 2 minutes, because every power play is crucial.
Right. A couple more things before we let you go. We have a bunch of Islanders fans on this podcast. What did you think of their decision to replace Trotz with Lane Lambert? And you think they can bounce back next year? Are they cup contenders or still a ways to go?
It all depends on what's going to happen in the offseason for the Islanders. Trotzy's one of my favorite coaches. I played for Trotzy for a handful of games in Portland. We won a world championship for Team Canada in 2003 together. I always say that Trotzy coaches people. He doesn't coach players. And that's why guys love playing for him. You never find a player they'll talk any smack about him as a head coach. I don't know Coach Lambert that well. I know he's well respected. I know he's been Trotzy's right-hand man for years. So that seems to me to be like a seamless transition. And I know people point out, well, his record is pretty good when Trotzy was out, like whatever. That's only a handful of games. That's like a backup goalie when you say, well, this guy came in and played 5 games. He was lights out. He should be our number one goalie. No, it doesn't work that way. He's a backup goalie for a reason. Not saying that coach can't be that same head coach. I'm just saying I need a longer period to see exactly what he's capable of doing. I think he's highly qualified and the players respect his voice. So I think that certainly helps. And if you watch Lou Lamoriello's track record over the years, he likes people that he's comfortable with. So he's not going to shake the boat with somebody he's not comfortable with. So I think that's a big factor. And when it comes to the team, it's going to come down to what they do this offseason. They need to find a little bit more offense up front, but also the guys need to be healthy. You had so many guys that were banged up after 2 deep runs themselves the last couple of years that they started off on the road. 13 games the road sucks. COVID sucks. They had all these issues. Everything that could go wrong for the Islanders went wrong for them. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this team healthy. I think maybe Clutter was the only person, Kyle Clutterbuck, that had surgery this offseason. So they should be healthy. And they should be rip-roaring, ready to go, because I know guys in that room are disappointed not to have a postseason the first year at UBS Arena.
Right. Okay, I'm looking around the room at our various Islander fan podcast producers, and they give the thumbs up. They're satisfied and encouraged with your response, so that's good. And one more thing, help us settle an argument with our pal Dave Damashek, who also works here. Who do all the players universally feel is the best sweater in the NHL?
The best sweater?
Yeah, aesthetically, best looking get up.
That's tough. I think most times guys go the original 6. Though those are usually the best. Yeah, I think the original 6. You can't go wrong. The original 6. I think for the new ones, you might go with maybe Vegas, but any of the original 6, you can't go wrong. Like you really can't. Boston, New York, Detroit, Toronto. You can't go wrong with any original 6 teams.
Which did you wear that you were like, oh my God, this is sharper than I even imagined? Because you were on 8 teams, right? Was it 8?
I was. I played a bunch of teams. I would say the Oilers jersey, believe it or not. It's just there's something special about playing in Canada.
Yeah.
It's all in it. It's bigger than being a movie star in Hollywood. It's bigger than being a football player in Europe. Like hockey, people eat, sleep, and breathe hockey in Canada.
Yeah.
And I remember when we'd have teammates that get called up from the American Hockey League, the minors, they get called up, and everyone in the city knew exactly who they were, where they went to school, where they played junior, what their parents' names were, if they had a girlfriend or not. Like everyone they were solely immersed with the game of hockey. And people were hammered at 10 o'clock in the morning, getting ready, pre-gaming, getting ready for the games that night on Saturdays for Hockey Night in Canada. So I never had a favorite team growing up in Toronto because we always had terrible teams. We had a bad owner, Harold Ballard.
Yeah.
We're always like one of the worst teams in hockey, but I love teams that won championships. So I jumped on the bandwagon. So I was an Oilers fan. And even before that, I was an Islander fan. My first jersey was Mike Bossy, New York Islander fan.
Oh, 22.
When they had their dynasty. So
yeah,
22. So it was even more special when I found out that Willie O'Ree wore number 22 also because it had a double meaning for me. But Oilers jersey, when I put that jersey on for the first time, that was special because I remember watching Gretzky and Messi, those guys, Grant Fuhr, win all those cups in the 80s.
Yeah, it must be great because you must be torn. You're like, wow, I want to wear this jersey everywhere, but then it's like, wow, I don't want to be recognized because then my life is a living hell, right? I can't go to the dry cleaners and drop stuff off. But yeah, that must.
Well, that's why I shaved the dreads too. I shaved the dreads. I wasn't a big fan of being recognized everywhere. My friends would yell at me because, like, wait, we can't get the clubs and bars right away because no one recognizes you anymore. I was like, yeah, that's the beauty of it. I want to be just a regular civilian and not have to, stick out in the crowd.
Exactly. Hey, what is, as we're on Edmonton conversation, what does Gretzky say during the break? Does he ever say things like, I would have scored 100 goals in today's game or stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. He was just salivating, just pumped. And we were like, come on, Gretz. That was what the hockey was like when you guys played. What are you talking about? Nobody back checked. I think he'd get all upset with us. But yeah, he was so pumped watching the game because he wished he played in that kind of hockey. Back when Gretz played, it was way more physical. Like you'd watch guys take the pucks hard to net, like McKinnon, McDavid, and they're untouched. And Gretz would make the point, and it's true. If he did that back in the day, he'd eat about 13 or 14 slashes. You know, but you can't do that anymore. So players get a free pass going to the net, which helps with the offensive output of the games.
Right,
Anson. I did think after the second intermission last night, it was great when you guys were discussing the game, and Gretzky said, the only thing I'm upset about is that I'm not up there playing right now because of the goal scoring going left and right. It was a great line by him.
It's so true. And even Rick Tocchet nailed it. He said, I want to know who's winning the car post game because during All-Star games, they give out the free car. Like that's what it felt like we're watching.
Gretzky, Tocchet, Anson Carter, all there NHL on TNT. You come back for the West games tomorrow, right? Game 2 back in Colorado?
Yeah, we're back at it. Game 2 tomorrow.
Lots of fun. Thank you so much, Anson, for jumping on with us. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Anson.